Greetings, 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 everyone. Peace. Welcome to Rootwork here on Black Liberation Media. My name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga, and what's today? Today's what, the 11th or 12th? This is my first show of 2025. I want to welcome you all here. Please come on in and sit down. I see it's a few of y'all watching, but I only see a couple of people in the chat. Greetings, Jesse. That's right. Let's go. Greetings to Tony. Appreciate you checking in on a sister. Come on in, have a seat, or grab whatever it is you need to grab. We're gonna get started in a few minutes with a couple of our guests. Hey, Leah, how's everybody? Greetings to you, Tatiana. Thank you for joining us today, for blessing me with your presence. Hey, Margaret Kimberly of Black Agenda Report. Nice to see you here. Hey, it's nice to be seen and not viewed, if you know what I mean. Hey, Yipper, how you doing? Greetings, everyone. Hey, Pasta Sauce, how you doing? So, I don't see Zen on here, but y'all know Zen from the chat. Y'all know Zen from the morning show. Zen was like, hey, you need to do a show. Da, 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 da. I said, you know what? You're right, because I'm seeing so much out there that is not being talked about. I said, let me do a show real quick. But what I want to do before I get to my guests today, and let's see, got somebody from Denver, Colorado. Hey, from New Orleans, how you doing? How's everybody? Like I said, come on in, have a seat. And this is going to be probably an emotional show for me today. Hopefully I can get through it. Y'all know I'm tech spicy. So hopefully I'm not going to mess too much up. But I want to try and help you visualize, and so that you can understand exactly what it is we are dealing with, have been dealing with out here in Los Angeles. So I am going to attempt, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to attempt to share my screen real quick to give you an idea, like I said, of some things that we have been dealing with. Now, I don't know how. Well, let me go over here real quick. We're going to see how this works. We're going to see how it works. Stop screen. Palisades. We're going to start. Let's try this one. And I see folks are filling up in the chat. I'm going to do my best to get to you in a moment. I'm going to do my best to get to you. I promise I'm going to do my best to get to you. So, all right, let's see if I can start with this. I'm still a little bit frazzled, and that's what I want to start talking about. It's 4:05. I don't want to keep my guests forever, but I have to explain partly why I have not been in journalist mode. So on Tuesday night, we got an alert here in Los Angeles, an extreme high wind warning. I'm usually not on the freeway a lot. I don't drive a big truck. I don't live in a desert or cavernous area. I don't live in the mountains. So when I hear about a high weather warning, I'm like, whatever. It's just like if there's a high surf warning. I'm not out on the beach. Whatever. But I do live in Los Angeles. I do live adjacent in some aspects to these areas. So we get this high wind warning. And I'm not quite sure what to make of it. This is Tuesday evening. By Wednesday morning, a fire has broken out in this area. Let me see. Can y'all? You know me. Like I said, I'm afraid to touch stuff because I'm tech spicy. But this is the area known as Pacific Palisades. Hold on. Actually, let me see. Maybe this will do it. I'm hoping that'll do it. Y'all will let me know. No, that's not going to do it, because now I can't get back. Hold on. But at any rate, you see this area right here of Southern California? This is the Pacific Palisades area. It's a rather wealthy area. This is north. This is, or should I say, this is south. That's east. That's west. So we're on the west coast. We're right here at the ocean. I'm trying to check the comments. You said you can see it? Okay, y'all can see it. Thank you. That's good to know. So now over here, right here in this area, we're heading north up Pacific Coast Highway, part of the 101 freeway. We're hitting Malibu. We're hitting Oxnard. We're hitting Ventura, Santa Barbara, going all the way up towards what is known as the Bay Area. Why is this not working for me? It's not working. It could be because it's on. Okay, it's not allowing me to zoom in and out. Maybe it. Hold on. Okay, there it is. I had to. Y'all just try to work with me. Try to work with us. It's letting me move it around now, but it's not as large as it had been. But at any rate, all right. Malibu Vista. All of this water. Santa Monica Mountains. Not the city of Santa Monica, but the Santa Monica Mountains. Moving on up. So this Palisades fire starts in this area. And over here we have an area known as Topanga, Calabasas, etc. This is part of what is called the San Fernando Valley, which borders Ventura County. Now, San Fernando Valley is part of Los Angeles County. It's north of Los Angeles. You see here, Beverly Hills, West Hollywood. It's part of the county. It's not the city of Los Angeles. And it's way out there. It's way out there. And when California, or Los Angeles, which is on the fault line, has an earthquake, a lot of what happens, a lot of the major damage happens up north here in the valley and all of these other areas. Let's see. All right. So again, this is the Palisades area where the fire is. This is north. Here we have Santa Monica. Just east of that is Culver City. And here we have Ladera Heights, View Park, Windsor Hills, getting into other areas of South LA. So this is where I am. This is the area I am in. I don't know if this is working for y'all. Somebody said, take my time. Is this working for y'all? Okay, yeah. So hopefully we can see my face. So this is the area where I am in, South Central LA, Leimert Park, etc. Here's Santa Monica, Culver City, Black folks over in this area. Now that's the Palisades fire. And then at some point, another fire started. Runyon Canyon, which is near the Hollywood Bowl, Hollywood Boulevard. I don't know if you can you see this word right here? This says Hollywood Boulevard. Sunset is over here somewhere. There's Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard. This is Runyon Canyon, where a lot of folks go hiking and get their exercise on. Over in here somewhere is the Hollywood Bowl concert venue. So a fire starts in this area. And over here north of downtown Los Angeles, this is Pasadena, Altadena. This is where what they're calling the Eaton Fire, which is decimated Black folks. But this is several miles, a couple of freeways, northeast of Los Angeles, northeast of South Central Los Angeles. Okay, but I'm gonna come back over here for a moment. At some point, as this fire is raging, an evacuation order, not a warning, which means watch out, an order as in y'all need to leave. And at some point, there's an evacuation order just south of Palisades at this beach. And that warning extends into the Santa Monica area. Over here with the Hollywood Bowl, the Runyon Canyon fire, evacuation warning extends to Hollywood Boulevard. Again, I'm over here. Usually when stuff happens, it is way up here out in the valley, miles and miles away. So now I'm like, wait a minute. What you mean evacuation warning on Hollywood Boulevard where the Chinese Theater is, where the Walk of Fame is? What you mean evacuation warning for Santa Monica, where we just down the street? What you talking about? What do you mean? You know, my car was stolen in November, a catalytic converter. My car is inoperable at the moment. I'm disabled. What is going on? So since Wednesday morning until about Friday, I guess, I have been unnerved. I go into my backyard out here in South Central LA and I see ash and I smell smoke. And I don't usually see ash or smell smoke from a wildfire, even the ones in Malibu. But because it's Palisades and we had 60-mile-per-hour winds, what you talking about? So I've been unnerved all of this time. And that's why I haven't had my journalist hat on. Because if I had had my journalist hat on, I would have remembered, oh, hold up. While the world is focused on Malibu and Pacific Palisades and the rich white folks and the celebrities, that's not rich white folks and celebrities in Pasadena, Altadena. It's black folks. It's black folks, working class and black middle class, generations of black folk, to the point where they have a Black History Parade every year, waving red, black, and green flags. Several members of the US organization, such as James M. Tume, yes, Juicy Fruit, James M. Tume, who co-wrote the quotable Chimurenga with Clyde Halisi, one of the mentors of Melina Abdullah, co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. They come out of Pasadena. Hank Jones, Black Panther Party San Francisco 8, comes out of Pasadena. George and Jonathan Jackson were living in Pasadena at the time of George's arrest for that gas station robbery. I wasn't thinking about none of that because I'm like, am I going to have to get up out of South LA with a fire breathing down from Santa Monica? So I apologize. I'm just trying to give you, not before we get into more background and context, I'm trying to give you my own background and context, because so many of my friends, Facebook friends, was like, wait a minute, Thandisizwe, it's black folks in Altadena, Pasadena? I was like, oh yeah. Matter of fact, yeah, there are black people there. And then the more I thought of, after I started coming out of my, oh, damn, I know black people from Pasadena, my bad. So yeah, like I said, I wanted to give you that background of why I've been tripping, why I have been unnerved. And I have asked two of my good sister friends, comrades, elders, if they don't mind being called that, to join me today so that we can explain to y'all, they can explain to y'all about some of this history of Pasadena and Altadena. Tricia Cochee is a longtime artist, author, community activist. I know her from Leimert Park, but she does have roots in the Pasadena, Altadena area. Makani Themba of Higher Ground Change, Social Change, Higher Ground Strategies. Before that, the Praxis Project. I'm not going to tell you how long I've known Makani because I'll be telling both of our ages. But my elder, my sister, my comrade, coming out of Pasadena, Altadena also. Thank you all so much for being on Rootwork today. And hopefully you can provide a more articulate presentation, because I'm still, as you can see, I'm still like, I'm coming out of being unnerved and razzled and frazzled. But thank you again for being on Woodwork today.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go. Y'all are off mute. Tricia, you were telling me, I'm gonna come to you in a second. Well, actually, whoever wants to start can start. But I know, Tricia, you were talking about the legacy of artists and their work in the Pasadena, Altadena area. Why don't we start with that?
Yes. Yes. Okay. But first, I just want to give prayers and just folks, I have so many friends that live in the Altadena area and some in the Pasadena. And I just want to, let them know that you definitely have our prayers. We're calling on the ancestors for you. And also, I've been sending out those GoFundMe's like crazy. So just asking everyone to support as they can with the GoFundMe. Yeah, I'm a fourth generation Californian, and my ancestors actually came out to the San Gabriel Valley, which includes Pasadena and Altadena, in, let's say, the early 1919, 1918. Black folks have been all throughout that area, Monrovia, Duarte. And so that's where my roots began. I lived in Altadena, was born there, and all the childhood memories, the three houses that we had that I grew up in are probably all gone. When you talk about Altadena, it's sanctuary, it's creativity, it's the arts. Octavia Butler has Altadena, Pasadena roots. Her archive is in the Huntington Library. Her remains are at the Altadena Mausoleum, and I do believe that structure is still standing. Again, so many artists. I mean, we can go down the list of actors, musicians. Ivan Dixon had a house there. I haven't been able to confirm this, but I've heard rumors that the Dandridge at one point lived in Altadena. Charles White, who was a Black artist that has touched so many artists' lives, not just Black artists, but white artists as well, everybody. Charles White was a mentor to so many. And his family still has roots there. Again, I don't know if they still have their house or not. There's a park named John Otterbridge had a house there. Betty Saar at one time lived in Altadena, Pasadena area. Again, I mean, I could just go down the list. Some of our more contemporary artists, Benny Maupin, who played with Miles Davis and everybody else in jazz, Dale Fielder, Daryl Moore, Sam Pace, Nolan Shahid. I mean, Tyra Banks even said she has family there. And of course, we know, related to Pasadena, that there's the Robinson family, Jackie Robinson and his brother Mac Robinson. Just a sidebar related to Pasadena. Jackie Robinson said that he would never go back to Pasadena, just only to visit family. So and let me back up a little bit. Altadena is unincorporated LA County. Right. Pasadena is its own city. And so Pasadena, when you talk about the history of Pasadena, you're talking about the rich white folks from the East Coast that would come to the West Coast, and this was their summer homes. So, and we're talking about, all of this was developed around the so-called Gilded Age. So we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at people that they call the robber barons, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when they talk about Pasadena, they always said, we're talking about the old wealth that came from the East, and this was their summer homes. So that's Pasadena. Altadena has a different history. Um, when we, as a family, moved to Altadena, we were the first Black family on our street, and this was in the early 60s. And my parents said at the time, there was a little makeshift cross burned on our lawn, and my parents sort of laughed it off and said, this is probably kids, they don't even know how to do it right. So there was tremendous racism in the area, redlining and all of that. And people have talked about Black folks could only live on the west part of Altadena. Lake was the dividing line.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, all of that has changed through the years. Uh, I was there. We left Altadena in 69. So I
Mm-hmm.
know that there were a lot of changes that came after that. More Black folks came to the area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, I mentioned sanctuary because, some folks say that they don't know about Altadena. Well, for folks that lived in Altadena, we liked it like that. We went there to be so we could do our art, so we could do our creativity. We didn't want people just being able to. When you drove to Altadena, you had to have a real reason why you driving all the way out to Altadena, and you
Hello.
better make that phone call
Hello.
and say you're on the way.
We on the way. Unless you better find
So
something to do.
we that's right. We appreciated the community. When I lived
Mm-hmm.
there, my mom was pretty much a stay-at-home mom, but if she wasn't, she left the back door open so we could come on in. There
Mm-hmm.
was a real sense of community. You did know your neighbors. Um, I don't, I don't know. At this point, I may be a little rambling, but it just gives you a sense of this was real neighborhood. And I have not felt that kind of neighborhood in most of the places that I've lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my sister have counted up places we've lived in, and we've lived in quite a few. You would think we were a military family by the way that we moved.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to stress that Black folks, when they came to Altadena and Pasadena, they were also coming for the educational system. At the time that we lived in Altadena, the school system was the best in California. I don't know what it's like now, but back in the day, it was the best school system. And in fact, it was an integrated school system, and it wasn't forced integration, it was just integrated neighborhoods. And that's the way it was at that time. So I'm only speaking about the time when I was there. I know in the 80s, when the crack came in, I know that there was some gang issues that happened, drug issues that happened in Altadena. Um, and hopefully a lot of that has been dealt with and cleaned up. But it wasn't exempt from those kinds of issues that happened to folks in LA as well.
Makani, come on in here.
All right, then. One, I just really appreciate what's been said so far. I am, excuse me, we moved as a family um, to the area in the mid 70s. My
Mm-hmm.
mom had researched, um, I had a brother who had a white father, and she actually researched the area because it had the highest number of interracial couples in the country. And at that time, it was really difficult to have mixed race children in a way. You know, there was so much around the color line. People are still navigating in 68 when my brother was born. And so she was trying to find a community where we could be, where we could like be Black. She was also an artist. So she connected with a number of those folks. My stepfather, at one point, Charles Carter, who is a well-known artist in the Pasadena area, visual artist. And my mom was part of this group around the Hen's Teeth Collective that was like Barbara O and Paris Earl and a number of Black artists in the area that during
Barbara O was in Pasadena.
Barbara O, yes.
Barbara
Long
O,
time.
Yellow Mary from Daughters of
Yes.
the Earth.
Yeah.
Yes. We are
Wow.
all good
Yeah.
women. Yes. All of
Yeah.
that. And it was a really, and my mom owned
Yeah.
a natural bakery, one of the first natural bakeries in Southern California, in Altadena, Nanda Bakes. And she was like famous for her carrot cake and all these things. And so part of our moving there and living there, especially for my younger siblings, was really about like finding a community, not only a Black community, but a community that was really a haven for Black excellence, but also Black weirdness in a way, right? Like not just it was like where people could be artists. And my mom was, and you may remember my mom, who's still that person in many ways. She was like, I have her hair, she was very much a hippie, a Black hippie, and she had plenty of company in Altadena. There were also like many of my friends whose, parents were like teachers and lawyers and dentists and all of that. And I think what we saw was a lot of us reflected in all the ways, working class, upper middle class, professional, just the whole range. And that there was that sense of connection and community. Now, I want to also be clear that community was also under duress and constantly contested by the white folks in power that be. It was common for the Altadena sheriffs to harass us as teenagers. It was a tradition for the sheriffs to stop us on prom night, have us get out the car and make us lay on the ground in our prom clothes just for their fun and entertainment. So there was, and when I went to Pasadena High School, it was right in the middle of the white flight and sort of fights and violence really around whose school was this going to be, because even, it's true, there was a lot of racial covenants east of Lake that were being enforced, even though they weren't legal by real estate. And then west of Lake, especially going toward Fair Oaks Avenue, Lincoln, which was actually named Lincoln because it was a Black community. That's why they named it. It used to be called North Fair Oaks, and they changed it to Lincoln back in the mid 1900s because Black people lived there, right? So there were always these markers of sort of boundaries, right, of where Black people were quote unquote supposed to be, that Black people were constantly pushing against, that the Altadena sheriffs and the police were constantly trying to enforce. And the last thing I want to say about that is to bring in the spirit of Michael Zinzin, who actually who is a leader and a pioneer in the work around police accountability. And that's where it all started. In Pasadena and Altadena, that's where he was from, and that's where Coalition Against Police Abuse started, was in Pasadena because of that tension, and that contention around who would get there. And I also need to name one other ancestor, and that's Joan Williams, who's the mother of my friend Chip Williams. And his dad was a Tuskegee Airman, actually, and they lived down closer to the Rose Bowl. His mother was actually the first Rose Queen in 1958. She was very light-skinned, so they did not know when they elected her that she was Black. Now she wasn't, she wasn't trying to pass or anything, but when they found out she was Black, they took her crown, right? And then they ended up, and I think it was 2000 and 8 or something. It was like many years later, they let her, when she was in her 80s, ride in the parade, and they didn't apologize. But just saying that it's like we had this beautiful haven, and I'm still close to my people. You know, my best friend still lives in Pasadena. Many of my closest friends still live in Altadena and Pasadena. But that it has always been both this community where you had, yes, some level of integration and engagement and people being beautiful neighbors. And then also this kind of policing of these lines and how we were treated in addition to that. So it's like both things, both the beauty and the difficulty. And I think in some ways, some of the erasure that's been happening in the media around who is affected by the fire, obviously not just Black people,
Right.
but that erasure, that it's because it's not just the people or the houses, but it's the community, the connection, the history. Even though I was really glad that the library survived. So, you know, that was a blessing.
The Huntington Library.
Yes, yes.
That Altadena
That was
library.
my first, that was my first library.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Hold on 1 second. Let's see.
I'm also trying to track the chat too. It's very active.
Oh, Black Liberation Media folk get active.
I'm saying.
And now and then trolls sneak in. We had one talking about the immigrants setting the fires. We're not playing that up in here. We're not playing that today. We're not doing that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But I do want to shout out Mama Ayana, who's been doing this incredible work, and who's in the chat, who's been doing this incredible work in South Berkeley to try to keep South Berkeley Black in many ways that folks have been doing in Altadena and Pasadena, preserving history, preserving the community.
You're saying keep it Black, and people like me who didn't
even know.
Because I'm down here in LA. Like, what do you mean keep it Black? It was Black folks in Berkeley, free speech movement, UC Berkeley, all of that stuff. It was Black folks in Berkeley. Really?
All of that, but South Berkeley is an old Black community, much like Pasadena.
The other piece that I wanted.
Yes.
Is there a delay, Tricia? Did you hear? She said, go ahead.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, okay. I also wanted to add, when you were talking about the whole sort of different kind of Black person, and it did remind me that we did have some hippies that lived when we first moved into our house. We did have some hippies that lived in next door to us. But I also wanted to add too that the area was, when I talked about when my ancestors first moved out here from Ohio, that they actually moved out here because the air was so clean, and one of the ancestors was having lung issues, and so he needed to be in a place where you could have clean air. And of course, this was long before the freeways came.
Right.
And more population came. Now, when we lived there would be days where you would walk out and your eyes would burn, your throat would burn because of the smog. It has since, with all of the car emissions, been cleaned up. So it's not as bad as it was during those early 60s. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that there was folks that came out to those areas like Monrovia, Duarte, Altadena, because there was land available. Some of those people came from rural areas. One of my ancestors, the in-laws, they actually graduated from Tuskegee. He was actually, his main teacher was Booker T. Washington, and he was a farmer. And I have memories of Gramps and his farm. He had all the animals and whatnot. And so this was in Monrovia, again, the whole San Gabriel Valley. And so a lot of times people forget that we have this connection to the land and that we brought that with us. We brought those kinds of skills and resources with us from the South. And we're looking for places where we could have that connection to the land. And so these were areas that we had, we were able to create that kind of community.
I know I know that's true for my mother. She's from the Caribbean, but it felt like home to her. You know, the citrus trees, the avocado trees, the whole thing. It just felt so much like home.
All of the family houses we had, we always had fruit trees. We always had fruit trees.
There was so many. I hear so many people talking about fruit trees in South LA back in the day, and I'm not sure. Like, what happened? Because there were people like Taliba Shakir, remember the Southern California Black Panther Party chapter. Well, hopefully I'll be speaking with next week. She was telling me about how as kids they would just walk around and just eat all day,
That's
just
right.
picking food off people's. It would be hanging over the fences, and you just walk down the alley and just eat. Just eat.
That's exactly what we did. And then neighbors would bring you a basket or a bowl of things. My mother certainly did that. And our house was a community house where people hung out, because I'm the oldest of many siblings, so our house was live. and I think my mom having a bakery, you'd come over, there would always be something baked. Always, she was always working. We had a carob tree. I didn't even know it. She knew all about all of that stuff being, Caribbean. And for her, and also being into natural foods, which I'm grateful, and, she'd make carob instead of chocolate, do all manner of things. And my friends would come over and be like, it looks weird, but it tastes good,
It looks weird. That is hilarious. If I can, like I said, I'm frazzled here. I want to go back to if you're joining us late, please go back and watch the beginning where I was giving context to why I'm doing the show today and why it's taken me so long to do the show. I wanted to share this really quickly. So I was talking about being unnerved because the evacuation warnings were hitting the Santa Monica area, Hollywood Boulevard, in relation to where I am in South LA, and how usually when it's a quote unquote disaster or something like that, I'm usually spared from it. This is a photograph of the Osage Avenue in Philadelphia. Now, this is not, I want y'all to work with me here. We're talking about an urban area. Santa Monica's got some mountains, of course. There's the Santa Monica Mountains, which are out near Malibu and Pacific Palisades. And then you have the city of Santa Monica. You have Culver City. You're moving continuously east towards South LA, where I am. And they're talking about an evacuation possibly in Santa Monica. These are cities. These are urban areas. But you're also talking about 50 to 60, quite possibly 100-mile-an-hour winds that are blowing embers. I'm already smelling smoke and seeing ash in my backyard way down here in South LA. This is what happened to the block when a bomb was dropped on the Move house. Just one house, and it took out the entire block. We're talking about what could possibly happen, right, in an urban area where one house catches fire. So this is part of the reason why I was so unnerved. I meant to show this photograph in the beginning when I was talking about context. But
it's important. I'm glad you showed it.
That's the reason why I'm just now getting to this, because I'm just now coming out of, oh, dang, we need to talk about this. I just now able to think, not focus on myself, but on the larger picture of Black folks in Altadena and Pasadena and climate change and how we are all affected regardless of where we are located.
I think that's right. And I think there's one other related point where at this intersection of race, the fire, and climate change, but also into overdevelopment, that part of the reason why we're having trouble with water, you have developments where they shouldn't be, where developers are able to pay out, add subdivisions and housing in places. Or you talk about, because the other place where a lot of Black folks lost their homes are in the valley, in some of these other places where folks have moved out to these subdivisions. And it's a high number of Black and brown folks who are moving out of LA because they can't afford to live in the city, who are moving out to these canyons, who are part of these large subdivisions where they don't have good water plans. They're not making sure there's water out there. They're not making sure there's water saved for fires in case of high elevation. There's all of these things that, because we're in the world we're in now, they're just not offering the same kind of infrastructure. And there's few federal dollars to support it. The cities and the counties are not ensuring that these developers are providing enough. They have to do water plans, but they're not even close, obviously. If they didn't know then, they know now. And so this way in which these issues are racialized, because they are moving, a lot of our people are moving out to these Fontana and all these places, Antioch in the north, and there are no plans. There are no clear plans to protect our folks and protect their property. And then the redlining in terms of the insurance. And people being kicked off of insurance. Those are all issues that have an intersection with racial justice.
Absolutely. There's no really plan to protect most of these folks. And that's something that I was going to get into in the second hour. But if you want to segue into that, I want to talk more about climate change with Angela Brown and Kali Akuno in my next segment. But got to jump in real quick. This there, like Mike Davis talked about in Ecology of Fear.
That's right.
People have known that this place, this area, this desert we live in is a tinderbox. There's nothing new about this. And before I go on a rant about the mayor, Karen Bass, whether she should be protected or not, she just got here. She just got elected. So to try and dump decades of madness onto her is fundamentally incorrect. It is unethical. Right. It is unprincipled. Right. It is incorrect. So we need to be clear on that part before I start going on off. But absolutely, the development, private developers. I was sent information on conspiracy theorists. I almost cussed out longtime friends. I'm like, don't be sending me this. Don't send me this now. There's too much truth out here to condemn people for you to be falling for dumb stuff and sending me TikTok videos. Don't do that unless you really want to get cussed the F out. Don't do that, okay?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I think people are getting, unfortunately, comfortable with that. But I think that this issue of what can we do, right? I know you guys will dig into that more, so I don't want to do too much about that. But but what can we do?
What can we do? Absolutely.
And part of what we can do is we need to definitely tamp down on these developers. We need to hold these insurance companies accountable. They should be putting more and more of their money in bond. They shouldn't be allowed to spend, over a certain percentage of the money they collect in policy payments, because they need to have a cushion to be prepared, because we are in the period of catastrophic disasters. And I know, I think Tricia is trying to get in, maybe having some problem with the camera.
Yeah, she's having problems with her camera, she said.
But yes, I see this. Yes, absolutely. It's talking about needing to incorporate indigenous ways of dealing with land, and there's a lot of lessons there. Water as well, and we're in California, where there is a lot of work and infrastructure to do just that. And then there are 1,600 people moving to the Los Angeles area every single day.
Please
There are
stop.
people leaving too.
Please stop.
You know, but I'm saying it's like, so there's got I believe in freedom of movement and migration, but it's also like we've got to deal with the economic realities as to why people are doing that.
Exactly.
And how does that play out? Because we have work to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not sure what time I brought you all in, but it's 4:47 now. And Makani, whenever I get a hold of you, I try to keep you forever anyway.
Oh no, but I'm glad to make room for the folks ahead. So, and I appreciate you doing the show. And again, shout out to all my people who are navigating this. It's unbelievable, but there are people who have lost generations of homes, like, because a lot of people in Altadena, they buy houses near their parents and their grandparents so they can all be together. So the impact is tremendous, and I appreciate you lifting this up. And hopefully we can put in the chat. I'll put in the chat some ways people can help, because as much as we need the prayers and the light, folks also need resources to move through this really horrible time.
And I do have a few. I was gonna, if you can go ahead and put out, that would be wonderful. That way I can focus on a couple of other things. But appreciate you so much, Mama. I really appreciate. I've been appreciating you forever and ever and a day. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Tricia, I'm sorry the camera's acting up, but thank you so much for coming at the drop of a dime to be on the show, also to share your memories of the history of Pasadena and Altadena. I appreciate you both so much. So again, if you came in late, go back later on and look at the beginning where I was frazzled. I'm getting a little bit better, and talked about the context behind why I wanted to do this show. I want to switch now and talk more about climate change and environmental factors. Actually, let me tell my guests, come on. I want to talk more about climate change and environmental factors and some of the nuts and bolts of what's been happening in terms of this fire. My first guest, who's supposed to have her hair comb and her face washed, and I don't see nothing, is Angela Brown. She's currently the executive director of the First African Development Corporation, the economic development arm of First African Church in Lithonia, Georgia. But prior to that, she was the founder of the Youth Task Force and on the board of directors of the Southern Organizing Committee for Economic and Social Justice, which is responsible for a lot of environmental justice organizing in the southeastern part of the U.S. So I asked Angela to come on to talk about that particular history. And I'm waiting on Cali Akuno, co-founder and co-director of Cooperation Jackson, to join us. Angela, you didn't comb your hair this morning?
Excuse me?
Angela, you're supposed to be on camera. I told you this was on camera, Angela.
Can you not see me?
No, I can't see you. Can't nobody see you.
I see you.
Angela. Okay, so while we waiting on Angela to comb her hair and brush her.
I have dreadlocks. I have locks. What are you talking about? Comb my hair? I ain't combed my hair since 1995.
Real quick, I want to go over it. Let me start with this real quick. I
want to make sure you can see me.
No, Angela, can't see you. We cannot see you. Hello? Going back to this.
You can hear me and not see me.
It's called the camera, Angela. We're at the camera.
I understand. My camera is on.
Oh, they're saying they can see you. I can't see you. I don't know why they can see you. Everybody's saying that everybody says that they can see her. All right, well, I guess I'll leave it at that. I can see Angela. It's not me this time. I'm tech spicy, but it's not me. I promise. It's not me.
It really is.
All right. Anyway, hold on real quick. I want to show this photo again. This is from a map of the Palisades fire. Really quick. Oh, Ayadele is saying she's going in and out. So I guess they can see her. Obviously, we can hear you. But real quick, this is the photo I was using earlier, the website I was using earlier of the Palisades map of the Palisades fire, Pacific Palisades. I want to show y'all this big blue thing over here. Y'all see this big blue thing over here to the left, off the coast of California, to the left of the fires? That's called the Pacific Ocean.
Ooh.
It's a great big body of water. And some of us was wondering, well, ain't that water right there? How come they not putting that water on the fire? Because it's right there. Mainly because that's salt water, and salt water is corrosive to machinery. It's also not good for the soil. And so relying on the ocean, which is right there, relying on that too much, because it's an area that we know this, it's prone to fire. As the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, LA gonna burn. Some part of LA gonna be on fire. To rely on salt water all the time is not going to be sustainable. People were using it this time because, hey, they're saying this is one of the worst fires, if not the worst fire in Los Angeles, California history. So they have been able to use ocean water, but because the wind, those 50 to 60 mile per hour, sometimes 100 mile per hour winds I was telling you about, it's too dangerous for the helicopters to go up, get the water, and then come back over the fire. Those helicopters would end up burning like the rest of the Palisades area. So as the winds died down, they were able to do drops, but they usually try to get water from freshwater sources, which is also the water that we use to drink, to bathe with, to cook our food. And we mentioned, you've heard, if you've been paying attention to the news, about the issues with water and water pressure to fight these fires. So that goes into municipalities and all this, that, and the other, which we'll get into that in a moment. I can see Cali. I don't know why y'all can't. I don't know why I can't see Angela Brown, but at any rate, Cali Akuno, co-founder, co-director of Cooperation Jackson, Angela Brown, co-founder, founder of the Youth Task Force, which at the time did extensive work around environmental justice in the Southeast U.S. Thank you all so much for being on Rootwork today. I'm not sure what all that background noise is.
I'm in a conference meeting. I'll go on mute until
Angela took
you ask me a question.
All right, as soon as Angela gets back. Well, I'll start with you then, Cali. And the reason I wanted you to be on is you're a co-founder of Cooperation Jackson, but the bulk of your work has been done in the New African Independence Movement, New African People's Organization, New African Independence, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, which led to the election of Chokwe Lumumba, the elder city council person and mayor. Unfortunately, he passed away in office. You were doing work around the Jackson Kush plan regarding, for folks who are familiar with the New African Independence Movement. But within the last few years, I noticed a lot of your attention has turned toward the environment, towards sustainable options, towards climate change concerns / global warming. And I was wondering where the brother going with all of this. And then I ended up taking a geography class in my junior college. I was like, oh my God, I understand what he's talking about now. So I was saying that I don't really feel, this is just me personally, I don't feel like enough Black folks are talking about climate change and what it means to us in an urban environment. I remember before it was called climate change, it was called global warming. People talked about environmentalism. There was this view of white folks being tree huggers. and like it had nothing to do with us. But as I said, you are someone who has obviously been knee deep involved in the work of Black liberation for so long. I wanted you to talk to folks, and at some point, hopefully Angela, okay, there's Angela, can talk about her background also. Talk to us about environmental, ecological concerns, climate change, and Black folks, particularly in urban areas. Thank you, Angela. But Kali, since I started with, let's start with you.
And apologies for some of the background noise.
No problem. No problem.
And folks are still trying to figure out some agenda points for our gathering tomorrow. So let me start by saying I would share your assessment that not enough of our people and not enough of our organizations are giving the crisis, that we are confronting. And it's not to also say it's not from at least my perspective in the argument I would wage. It's not just that, the climate is our ecology and climate are being destroyed. There's a massive species loss that we have all been living through. So we are going through what many term the sixth mass extinction, and largely a result of human activity as a result of the expansion of European colonialism and imperialism and capitalism. So leave those things out of the equation, because without the different relationships within nature to kind of sustain our ecosystems, if you remove the native plants and you remove the insects and you remove the natural flora and fauna and all the creatures within an environment, you change it in ways that are hard to comprehend, but make it so that it's not sustainable or viable to regulate, the temperature and the ecology. So it's not just the fact that the capitalist system is pumping so much CO2 and methane and other gases into the air. It's also that they have changed the very nature of how the Earth's ecology functions and works with the massive enclosures, that have been committed under colonization, the industrialization of food production, the destruction of wetlands, and it's a whole piece that ultimately we're going to have to dismantle. And there's not enough of us having a serious conversation about it at this time or doing enough organization. I would challenge anybody to say that we have enough of our people given that a focus. But that being said, I do think we got to stand and share some of the historical narrative so that doesn't get confused and distorted. And the fact that, it was Black people, African people who started or were key in starting what was known in the 1980s as the movement around environmental racism, which directly gets into the piece that you're talking about, like how this impacts our people, particularly in urban areas where, we were being housed, our houses and neighborhoods were being constructed directly on toxic sites, where they had done, chemical waste or were adjacent to Superfund sites or adjacent to dump areas or right next to coal plants or nuclear plants or, power stations.
Freeway, being ringed by a freeway.
All the different kind of things. And so, that movement, which really gave birth to the demand that there even be a process around addressing the climate, that our people were instrumental in that. Now, if we study the history and want to be honest about it, that the movement that was born in the 1980s it hadn't totally died. There's folks, Dr. Beverly and some of those folks who were around are still, keeping the fight going.
Right.
They still on the scene, but we have to be real about some of the divisions that wind up being created in the philanthropic world that tried to divide the unity that many that early movement was constructed on between Black, Latino, indigenous, and some kind of white working class communities and some of the trade unions. Like that was, I would argue, intentionally divided in the late 1990s. And,
well, hold on. I want Angela to talk about some of that work, but before we do that, real quick, I want to, for those members of Black Liberation Media who are watching this, who don't know, I know it's only two of y'all. Everybody else know this, but for the two of y'all that don't know, you know, the issue of emissions from using coal, from using natural gas, from creating gasoline and other products, filtering into the atmosphere and upsetting the delicate balance of our atmosphere, our ecosystem, being recycled and coming back down onto the earth, upsetting the balance where, for lack of a better definition, because I'm still frazzled, you know, the heat imbalance that is beginning to occur, that the atmosphere is not able to keep that balance of coolness. And so polar ice caps melting and the water going into the ocean rising, not only making the sea levels rise, but warming the waters, which creates an effect on the land with the air and on the land, creating more and more powerful hurricanes or tornadoes or tsunamis
or deserts or droughts,
drought.
flood, all that. Yeah.
Again, seawater flooding areas. Now you can no longer utilize the land for your food, or there's a drought, not enough rain, fresh water. And so it's creating these conditions that lead to what people are calling climate catastrophe. But let's say you live in the west end of Atlanta, or you live in Compton, or Leimert Park, or Watts. You're not out here growing food. You're just trying to live your life. Angela, talk to us about, so now you have the environmentalist movement, which is trying to push back all of these ecological issues. But what's happening in our cities? What's happening in our neighborhoods? Some of which are rural and some of which are urban. Talk to us about that history.
So, good evening, and thank you for having me on your show. I am Angela Brown, and I started at 13 years old with the environmental justice movement, 1979. We laid our bodies down in front of the trucks in what became famous with the Warren County struggle in North Carolina.
North Carolina, okay.
And from there, just continued to work on this issue for a number of years or decades, actually. Many of those folk, we say ashe to, like Connie Tucker and Damu Smith, Dana. A lot of folk have lost their lives in this struggle. So it's not a new struggle. And as a young person that went through helping to develop the environmental justice movement, here's the thing. At the end of the day, when it comes to the worst, when it comes to Black and brown communities, when the poor communities, we bear the brunt of whatever the devastation is. It lands in our communities. And so this notion of climate change, you can't talk about climate change without talking about the things that you all have already said, which is the rising, the heat that rises from Mother Earth for the number of cars, the way in which we build, the way in which we don't operate in sustainable ways that treat the earth the way it should be treated. And so at the end of the day, you get what we have now, the climate change that also impacts the fires that are happening where you are, Sister Thandi. And so nobody is exempt. And that's the thing at this point. None of us are exempt, and that we really are from heart to heart and breast to breast connected because we all live on this planet. I don't care when they try to go build something and say that they're, or go isolate on island right now, we either gonna all solve it, we all gonna suffer from it. And so, and the suffering may be at mine today or at yours today, but surely all will end up suffering because of the way in which we walk on this earth. So we can start there, but the bottom line is, again, these corporate structures. Yes, I mean, there are personal things that we could do. We've been talking about issues linked around climate change. We could talk about chemicals. We could talk about the toxicity. We could talk about dioxins. Listen, there is no shortage of understanding all of these issues and how they're all connected. But when it comes down to it, there are some massive things on global levels that should be happening that we've been arguing for 20, 30 years around this stuff that still hasn't happened. If you take the chlorine out, right? It's the chlorine, stupid. It's the dioxins. We're talking a class of chemicals that have penetrated or produced in our society and globally that causes all this havoc that we're looking at. Mm-hmm. Corporations are not going to get rid of it. We're going to keep pressing. We're going to keep organizing, but they don't, there's nothing that when it comes to the almighty dollar, when it comes to capitalism, when it comes to, I mean, literally people have given their lives to this struggle. And, we'll continue to give our lives to it. And we're going to continue to kick against the prick. I'm now 59. I had to think about that.
You don't know how old you?
I know. I started this at 13.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And there's, we've moved communities. Black communities hadn't gotten moved. You can go back to Love Canal, but yet when we looked at the communities in Florida, they never would allow our communities to move and do the buyouts the way that they did in white communities, right? I mean, these struggles so there's a historical basis for what we're talking about, specifically around the environmental justice movement, but it is a part of our legacy as African people in this country, but even around the globe, of how white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy all work hand in hand to create the kind of society that we have. And therefore, in your back door, coming to you is a fire, right? It's all connected.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to do everything. I'm trying to put in the chat. Hopefully that'll do it. It keeps cutting it off. This is a Google Doc of families that need us, Black families in Altadena, Pasadena, who are in need of assistance, who have lost some of everything. I was able to finally find a much smaller link, so I just put that in the chat.
I'm not seeing the chat, but you can always just email it to me. See, those of us in the South, right? Those of us here have this. You're the first person that I heard talk about the devastation, because what the media, CNN and everything else, nobody's covering the African communities that are being devastated or have already been wiped out by these fires. Right. They go to the Hollywoods of the world to want to talk about this. And so I think it's so important that we do spread the word and we talk about what this means to historical Black communities in California. So thank you for that.
But that's what's happening with fires in this tinderbox, in this desert of Southern California. Kali, you had said something to me once about New Africa. We were, again, talking about your work in the New African Independence Movement, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, etc. You said that New Africa was going to be underwater. So I'm dealing with fires and wind out this way and earthquakes. What do you mean New Africa is about to be underwater?
Well, I mean that literally. And if we just look at most of the projections of sea level rise, over the course of the next 50 years, which I would argue now, most of these projections, just so folks are clear, most of the projections that, the advanced kind of science models folks started working on, in the early part of the 21st century, right, with the advanced computers. Many things that they were predicting would take place around 2050, they are now already upon us now. Right? That's here, right? And so we see that the reality is exceeding what the calculations of following the patterns and the flows and the temperature rise. We've already exceeded most of that point. So I want people to understand that first and foremost. But I want folks to just understand basically some basics of geography, right? And that most of the state of Louisiana is either at or below sea level. Now that's the sea level rise that we all grew up with, the 20th century, when the reality of the situation is, for most of the last 20 years, on average, again, I'm gonna keep it in the state of Louisiana. The state of Louisiana loses about 2 football fields worth of land to sea every day. So if you look at some of the old school maps that you have of what Louisiana looks like, as compared to again a good updated, even just Google Maps, you already see large chunks of the land in the deep southern parishes. That's already gone, and what's left is like just roads that have been built over levees from the work that got done in and around mid-century of the 20th century, right? All of the New Deal work around constructing levees and dams and energy, in some portions, that's all that's basically left. Well, Mississippi is not, that much different. Large parts of Mississippi are either at or below or barely a foot or two above, sea level readings from what say about the 1990s. That's also true for Southern Alabama. That's also true for southern parts of Georgia, and it's also true for most of the entire state of Florida. So if you look at some of the projection maps, a lot of the low-lying areas where our people have been concentrated on account of how we got incorporated into this society as chattel to work the most productive agricultural lands, those lands were as a result of millennia of soil deposits that came down, particularly from like the Mississippi, but also some of the other rivers that form the natural basis of leading out into the Gulf of Mexico, either from the Appalachian Mountains, or the Tennessee River Valley Basin, the Pearl River, etc. All those different things that empty out are at a direct result. What you're seeing, what most of we consider the South or New Africa, is a result of about 50 million to 100 million years of soil deposits. And if you take a deeper crack at studying, geography and plate tectonics, you have an understanding that there's 2 high elevated plates in what is now considered North America, and that's the kind of the western plate, of which California to the Rockies is a part of, and then there's the eastern plate, of which is the old Greater Appalachia. In the middle of that, there used to be an ocean, and because of how these two have come together, that ocean basically has just kind of the land rose and eroded that ocean. But it's the reason why we have the Great Plains, right? That was once an ocean. And if you look at the geography of how things work with the torrential winds that come off the Gulf of Mexico, it's because the natural features of how the earth and the globe are structured, it still remembers that geography. And that's why that became Tornado Alley, right? Like the earth don't forget. We might not know, we might not understand, but it knows what's going on and what's supposed to be. And so, yeah, the large part of what we consider home, our ancestral home in North America, good chunks of that y'all are going to be underwater. And what is our thinking? What is our planning to be able to deal with this? And to just be frank, that is why, on some of our thinking, folks have questioned, like, with some of the stuff that we have done in like Vermont or some of the other people, like, oh, y'all abandoning New York. Like, no, we ain't abandoning anything. We trying to be proactive and understanding where we might need our people to be situated 50 years from now, and trying to look ahead and not just be so situated and stuck in place and remain in areas where capital and the forces of white supremacy deem that we should be, but try to be proactive and figure out what are the best places that we can intentionally move to that might serve our collective needs and the needs of our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the future, for those who choose to stay in North America. So that's what I mean. It's not abstract. It's very practical, and we see this happening in real time. It's not nothing that's being made up or I've conjured up. I wish that was the case, right? It could be dismissed, but no, this is what the actual developments are leading. This is what the science tells us, and this is what we are clearly seeing, witnessing, and experiencing with our own eyes.
When the Republic of New Africa first came along, Imari Obadele, I didn't hear him say this, but I've been told by enough people, Chokwe Lumumba, one of them, saying that Imari believed that a free and independent Black nation could exist side by side with the United States of America. All respect due to Imari and the work he has done. That's one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my life. In order for a new Africa, in order for an old Africa, the continent of Africa, to be free, to be united, to be liberated, just like a new Africa, capitalism in the United States of America, as it's presently constituted, has to fall. And I was just looking at it from the imperialist aspect. It sounds like what y'all are saying is that without capitalism falling, not only can New Africa not be free, there will be no New Africa. It will be underwater.
That is correct. That's what I'm saying.
Did you hear that, Angela?
That's what I'm saying. To be clear.
That's what I heard.
I think it's going to happen. I don't think that's more of a reality than it not happening.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
the land we struggle for, it's scientific. The coastal regions continue to be eroded. You could just look at it. You can see, that's not, you see houses falling into the oceans. So that means the water's rising. The land is diminishing.
The land is sinking and eroding away. The water is rising and development is continuing. No commercial development is continuing, but there is no development to stop and save the land so that the people can live. Where does that come in? It's not going to come in under capitalism, which exists to rape the earth as quickly and not even as efficiently as possible. Just rape.
Well, we need to be clear. They've given up any notion of pretext of efficiency. That's gone. That's a myth.
Yeah.
And if you listen to what they're saying, just very intently, they're not even hiding some of the agenda anymore. Elon Musk openly run around talking about we need an extinction of it. He's openly saying that.
This mother. Okay, go ahead.
He's openly.
He started talking about taking other lands, renaming land. Greenland. Come on, because they already know that the land called the yet to be United States. They already know a lot of that is gone. So they try to get absolutely. That's what it does. So rather than deal with that's the sickness of the system of oppression. Whichever system you operate in, all of them systems of oppression. That's what they do.
And if folks, I want you to look it up. Look up Jeff Bezos' vision for colonizing the moon and what he intends for to happen on the Earth, right? And I'll share a little snippet of it. So he's talking about roughly, a couple of million people colonizing the moon. And listen to what I just said: a couple of million people colonizing the moon, depopulating the Earth, and turning the Earth basically into a wildlife reserve for a couple of generations, so that the Earth can heal itself. So think about the implications of what that means. You're talking about genocide on a tremendous scale. Roughly, there's been some arguments and articulations coming out of, the Davos so-called forum, where they've openly stated a couple of times, not just once, but on several different occasions, several documents saying, well, roughly about 6 billion people are superfluous, and we're going to have to figure out how to eliminate them.
Exactly.
That's ultimately what they're saying. So, the either you let these fires and stuff like that, do the job, or you openly, commit to the Gaza program, which they clearly are not averse to doing, and they've demonstrated.
Oh, that's right.
In
All
broad daylight.
So
So
yes,
we just need to be clear what time it is and who
Right.
who's up to bat and what they're planning on doing, and then have some more serious conversations on what the hell we gonna do about it, to ensure our future in a future for not only humanity but a planet that is inhabitable for us and all the other creatures that we depend upon. In ways that we're not even fully cognizant of yet, or don't fully understand, or have lost the knowledge of, I should say, intentionally, from how we've been, colonized and educated intentionally to be, disconnected from the earth and how it functions.
So Angela and Kali, what are the practical things that we can do now? Not this armchair, highly philosophical, revolutionary, rhetorical, philosophical stuff. What are some practical things that we can do?
Well, first we gotta. Let me go just real quick, Angela, because we would be remiss in saying that we need to make sure that everybody who's listening now or will listen in the future do everything you can to particularly help our people in Los Angeles, right? And for Black folks, there may need to be a concentrated effort towards helping our people in Altadena. Now I'm a Southern California, I'm an LA boy originally. I live in Louisiana, Mississippi now, but I was born and raised there. And folks should know, there are a few neighborhoods and cities where Black folks have done some very intentional development, and Altadena is one of them. So when you read and hear that story, understand what you read and hear, and dig a little bit deeper as to why I'm saying some resources should be directed there from our people. Now, another point that we're gonna have to really figure out is that we need to figure out with some allies how in the short term we're gonna wage a battle both with the government and with the financial institutions that are called insurance companies. It ain't nothing but a financial institution at the end of the day. To either not exist or to come up with programs wherein the government is going to actually follow scientific understanding and mandates and do development differently or cover for the damages that are inflicted by its backwards ass policies and programs, right? And so that means, not allowing these insurance companies to hold all these resources and assets that they've accumulated from people paying them, over decades, that they can just say, well, we're falling out of covering Southern California or covering these counties, which, incidentally, they just even did in the Palisades area a couple of months ago, right? A couple of insurance companies just bailed on some coverage. But then you got, states like Louisiana and Florida. Basically, all you got to cover you now is insurance protections by the state, because all the insurance companies pulled out, right? Saying that these are not areas that are safe. So that should tell us something. If the insurance company, if the institution of capital is saying it's not safe, but they still allowing people to live there and to build houses there. We'll have to build a social movement that forces them to take a different direction. And we got to use this moment to educate our people. So that's, the mutual aid, education, and then a program of action that's focused in on dealing with a better way to manage this crisis, I would say, is the third point. And then the fourth one, I'm gonna go on the loan piece, is that we have to demand first and foremost that all policy from this point forward follow what the science dictates has to be done. And trust me, that's going to put us in the direct line of fire of the government and of the institutions of capital, because they don't have no intention at this point, given our present disorganization and weakness, on changing their course of action at all. But unless you want to be burnt out or blown out or frozen out, we don't really have a choice. That's the state of development that we at.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at, first of all, Bobby, the government will never do what we want unless we force them to do so. For them to do it themselves is literally against the nature. Ain't nobody talking about sitting around wishing and hoping. I said, what can we do? We have to force them. We have to unite and organize. It's clear to me.
Yeah, I see. I agree. So I understand, because it's always been either it's about jobs versus the environment, and then sometimes we so lofty. I'm just going through reading some of the comments, the EVs and this. Listen, at the end of the day, the issue is we have to organize, and that's a lot of hard work, right? And so I dare say, even after this many years of working and organizing, that we have a single solution to any one problem that we're facing, right? So when you're organizing, you got to organize around issues, those kind of issues, cultural issues of oppression. Even when you're organizing among us, right? We got to deal with that. There's no one bullet. There's no one magic bullet around any of this, or we would have already fired the shot and won this battle. So this is a protracted struggle that we are in. Certainly, we can talk about corporations and their responsibility. Listen, they working off a 100-year plan. They got a 200-year. They got a 1,000-year plan. We barely got a 1 month plan, right? And so, for me, there's not enough of this kind of discussion to even talk about what is a issue that we would end up organizing around. We haven't continued that kind of work. I mean, if it's happening, it's happening on a much smaller level. When we were, and I say this, we, Thandie, were young people and working with SOC and MXGM and doing that kind of, I don't see that level of work going on with young people. I could be missing it because I ain't young no more, right? And so, but we were taking on these kinds of issues in our own local communities and building chapters all over the country for any young people that want. We understood that the power was in our ability to mobilize, organize and mobilize, right, for action. I don't see that happening. And so the environmental movement is going to stay lofty. It's always going to talk about the science of it, because we can't get the real scientists to come and sit and say, to give us the real critical science that we need for a solution or solutions, right? And so there were activist scientists who really were a part of our movement. We had activist lawyers who were part of environmental justice, so we knew who to sue, what we were going to go after. But they were on tap, not on top. We were clear that the professionals came in. They walked with us as grassroots organizers, right? And so the engineers came in. That's how you got a Beverly. That's how you got the Bobs, right? That's how they came into our work, understanding that you're on tap, not on top with this work, right? Let's work this out together. Don't just write about our stories. Let's be about doing the hard work in the communities, right? And so I don't feel that in Atlanta, right? And I worked for one of those kind of Big 10 organizations for a number of years. You know, where they are in this process, those discussions are not being held in Black communities in Atlanta. Just say that. National Wildlife Fund, the Audubon Society, they ain't going away, but that work ain't happening. Environmental justice ain't on their agenda.
Right. Nor ours. Nor ours.
I didn't hear you.
I said nor ours. Not many of our liberation organizations don't have that.
Right. Environmental justice is kind of falling off. Now, those who are committed to this work, you know, most of us went and started growing our own food, right? Started personally living out our convictions around what we knew to do in all of this. And so, I mean, I think if the fires wake up, you know, in California and people decide that we want to start organizing again, I think we could do it. And I think you're right, my brother, when you said that some of the foundations are at fault why the environmental justice movement got splintered, of who they chose to fund and who they didn't. Where did those monies go? Where did those dollars go, right? And so social justice dropped all off their agenda. They didn't even talk about funding nothing that had to do with social justice. For after they stopped environment, they stopped social justice. Some of it is coming back now, but for the most part, you know, the funding to do that kind of work is not readily available to grassroots organizations. So practically, what can you do? I mean, a lot of people went out and bought Teslas, right? God only knows why. I'm sorry if you drive a Tesla. Ooh, we have mercy. Practically, you know, we all talk about, you know, walking to work, biking around, doing, you know, those kind of practical things. But that's the individual. When you look at corporations,
that's the individual approach.
That's the individual approach. But when you look at these, I almost cursed.
Corporations.
Right. When you look at these big, massive corporations, the waterways that they pollute, I mean, Cancer Alley ain't going away, right? It's gotten worse. And so if anybody got that silver bullet, but at the end of the day, it's about organizing. Our liberation. We ain't got no other choice. That's all we know is to organize.
And not organizing in the abstract. Well, first of all, you can't organize in the abstract. That's like an oxymoron. You have to organize around something practical and something tangible. So I put in the chat, put in a couple of things in the chat. Black Lantern Co-op in Los Angeles is one organization in South LA, which is collecting donations and distributing them to Black folks in Altadena, Pasadena. I put in their Instagram link. Okay. Pasadena Black pages is also organizing for relief. I put them in the chat. Forget who else I put in the chat. Just check the chat, check the comments, and you will see ways that you can assist. Cancer Alley is specifically in Louisiana. It probably does refer to all of the U.S., but this is a specific area in Louisiana where a lot of petrochemical corporations are located, polluting the air and the soil, and folks end up in a Black area, and that's where they're located. And of course, everybody in that area ends up with some form of cancer. So that's why it's called Cancer Alley.
From Baton Rouge to New Orleans, it's historically helped to shape this notion of the environmental justice, environmental racism. And
remember in Alabama, I don't know if it was a corridor, but there was an instance of landfills, garbage dumps that were located.
That's right.
In the Black Belt. So yeah, every area has got its thing, as we say, got something going on. I have 5:36 Los Angeles PM time. I'm still frazzled because they're saying that the winds might pick back up in another couple of days. So it might be blowing embers my way. I don't know yet. So I can't really focus that well. Angela, what do you want folks to know? Watching live and who will watch this on later. What do you want people to know? Kali, what do you want people to know? And we'll go from there.
I was looking at these comments. Yeah, my brother, go do that.
Yeah, I was looking at them too. It took me a minute to get on just to try to.
They do a lot. They do a lot in the chat. So yeah, they do a lot.
What I want people to know, I start with the premise of what you articulated, and understand that our people are some of the first people, in a direct line, an immediate line of fire around this issue.
Mm-hmm.
Given, both our geographic locations, where we've been situated, not just in the the south of the North African, national territory, but in most urban areas that we are in places, that were designated as sacrifice zones, and are in places that are most prone to ecological disasters and collapses. And so we need to start doing some resiliency, preparation, organization, and coordination in our communities and social organizations wherever it could be emergency prepared, but also to develop programs that build alternatives, that enable folks to have additional resources, but to also to move with power, in a number of fundamental ways. To challenge the conditions that our people may find themselves. But I'm also speaking in the global context, right? A number of our people still in the Caribbean, and those islands are facing, some drastic climate change impact with sea level rise and how it's shifting and changing the environment there. Because one thing you started off with about, what's happening with the Arctic Circle kind of eroding and the ice melting there in Antarctica. One of the things that we see that is taking place is that the currents which shape how water moves and clouds and rainfall happens. The Atlantic current is shifting, and it looks like it may be on the verge of collapse within the next 10 to 15 years. And that's going to have profound consequences. So, runaway consequences that folks are not actually, clear on. But sit with that, because the other place, which is already going through some major environmental calamities, probably some of the most concentrated one, you just don't hear about them as much, is the African continent. And food production, desertification, all those different things are already in rapid decline in many areas in Africa and have been for a while, because this is the issue that it takes some time to fully develop and for folks to fully recognize, all of its impact. But if you look at, the Sahara Desert is growing rapidly, eating away at the Sahelian region. So part of the reason of understanding a lot of the recent upsurge in violence from, Islamic forces has to do directly with climate change. And if you want to talk about the kind of the Arab Spring, we have to remember what precipitated that was a massive drought that had happened in that region, which caused the wheat production to fall and the price of bread to skyrocket, because the governments, in the way that they are presently structured, or were structured at that time anyway, they couldn't continue the subsidies. Egypt, Tunisia, some of those would be in some of the major, and Syria, which has just gone through a major, government overhaul, wherein the forces of imperialism have been able to kind of install some of their more direct puppets in place to support their Western imperial project, either in the form of Zionists or Islamic puppets, to run there. But we need to be clear what the connections is, because what even prompted that again was this ecological crisis causing drought, which caused a deep social crisis with food shortages, price hikes, etc. And that's also happening going back to the African continent, that we've seen some of the worst combination of typhoons and drought in
Mhm.
Mozambique, Malawi, Kenya. Just last year alone, there was some major consequences. And was it 2 years ago? Typhoon did some major damage that Zimbabwe and a couple of other countries, are still trying to recover from to this day. That is a direct result of climate change. So
Mhm.
don't just impact us within the United States. This impacts us wherever we are, and we have to also get prepared on the other end with the massive migration that we are seeing our people undertake, particularly in our folks leaving from the Caribbean and South America, trying to get here, or folks leaving from the continent trying to get to Europe. And this whole notion, of fortress Europe and fortress the United States to keep our people, in place or to keep them behind bars, we're going to have to figure out how to build an international movement in the program that addresses these issues and make sure our folks are not imprisoned behind some walls, which is already taking place. There was a major massacre that happened 2 years ago in Morocco, where at the behest of the Spanish government, the Moroccan government massacred an unknown number, probably about 200 of our people, in a Spanish hamlet that the Moroccan, that is in Morocco, that the Moroccan government runs and maintains for the Spanish government. So if you think colonialism is dead,
You're wrong.
think again about
Sadly,
how. So we need some deeper education on this issue. But I want folks to just know that if you think that you are somehow immune from this or it's not going to touch you, you are dead wrong.
Angela.
Yeah. So if you ask me what's the solution or what do I want people to
What do you want people to know and
to
do?
know walking away from here is that we still have to educate, we still have to teach, we still have to organize in our communities. I am familiar with the movement builders here in Atlanta. I'm familiar with their work. I think we have to continue to do that kind of work. But one thing is clear: if Bezos has left the United States, it's because, and headed to the moon, it's because they already know the devastation. They can no longer get anything else out of this earth. And so they are headed into space. So that is clear. There's no more monitorizing that's going on, that they can rape Mother Earth. So they've headed to space. I want people to continue to struggle on these issues, to continue to educate around these issues. They're all connected. My brother just connected us from Mother Africa to the United States, to Europe, wherever it is, and our people are everywhere. So everywhere we are connected to these kinds of struggles. And I would say, as the environment goes, so goes our people, right? So goes Mother Earth. And so we're not exempt. So continue to learn, continue to figure out where in your community people are raising these issues and get connected to that work. It's important. Our future depends on it. So I'm excited for you, Thandisizwe, to even have this conversation going. I mean, it really does burn my heart to have this level. And so thank you to your listeners for engaging on this topic. I
Watchers.
didn't know there'd be that many people engaged.
Watchers on the wall. Well, that's my understanding of why Black Liberation Media exists. I'm doing the work we're supposed to do. And if you came in late, go back and watch the beginning where I give my explanation of why it took me so long to do this show. I was in my own world, worried about whether or not I might have to evacuate. And then I realized, oh, Lord, wait a minute, it is Black people. in Pasadena. Had me forgetting I knew black folks. Actually knew some of them. That's how scary it was and might still be. But I want to thank you all. I love you both. I could keep you forever. You already know that. I'm not going to keep you forever. If you want to hang out, you're welcome to. I just have a couple of notes that I want to share with the Black Liberation Media watchers, audience, before I officially sign off. So, but let me thank you now so much. Thank you, Angela. You know I appreciate you. I appreciate you for your work, for your comradeship, for your sistership, for your allowing me to call you at 4 a.m. and not cussing me out. That's the main reason I love you.
Ditto, my sister.
Cali, you know I love you being able to call you at any time. You don't always call me back, but it's okay. I love you anyway. I got nothing but love for you. Nothing but love for all the work that you have done and the work that we're going to do together in the future. I really appreciate y'all. I wanted Black Liberation Media folks to get an idea, a sense of the history of Black people in Pasadena and Altadena. I wanted to talk about what climate change actually is, how it affects Black folks. And I had some other notes that I just want to address real quick. Again, if y'all need to leave, I understand. I'm inviting you to stay. You don't have to go. But all right, bro. I know you in a meeting. Thank you again so much. I'll be in touch. So yeah, it's a man-made. It's not a natural disaster. Well, man's hand because of climate change, because of capitalist expansion, has mangled the natural process. California has been a desert since it's been California. But this whole issue of climate change, of the earth warming, of the delicate balance of the ecosystem being thrown off because of capitalist greed is now exacerbating not only what's happening in California, but elsewhere. So it is a natural disaster / man-made disaster. But I wanted to address a couple of things because, again, people have come to me and said, you need to do a show. They're saying that the Palisades fire may have started as a result of something, a small fire in a backyard that ended up getting out of hand. The Eaton fire in Altadena, Pasadena, it may have been a transformer on an electrical power line, etc. A lot of people in social media are talking conspiracy. Oh, people are setting these fires. Every time a fire happens, you have copycats. You have pyromaniacs. Some people call them firebugs. We already know this. Yes, people are setting fires. They do this, but fires also happen. Lightning can strike an area that has been dry. Out here in this area, we had one of these years, we had the most rainfall we had ever had. The vegetation grew. It was lush, and then it dried up. It was not cleared away. So a power line sparking, somebody disposing of coals at a campsite or at a barbecue in the backyard improperly, somebody flicking a cigarette. We have had wildfires, not just in California, but across the country. Somebody was flicking a cigarette out of the window as the car is driving down the freeway. Wildfire, lightning striking. There's a reason that African people talk about Shango. Lightning strikes and a fire then occurs. These things can happen naturally, and there can be man's involvement. I know not y'all, I'm just saying in general, don't send me no TikTok videos talking about somebody setting a fire. It happens. Firebugs, copycats. We know this. They got a word for that, arson. It's illegal. When they catch you, they lock your butt up. Okay. Controlled burns. A lot of times, fire workers, firemen and women, will set a controlled burn in an area as a way of getting clearing brush. Somebody sent me a video of somebody setting a controlled burn saying, see, they lying about the fires in LA. They setting the fires. And then wanted to argue with me. They're not in LA, mind you, but they sending me a video talking about what. Anyway, let me hush. I mentioned earlier about that big old body of water off to the left of the map called the Pacific Ocean, and why that water is not always used to put out fires. It's salt water, it's corrosive, it can destroy machinery over time. It can also destroy the land, which is what we use to sustain ourselves. But of course, my position is it's unsustainable. Why haven't you come up with something to desalinate the water? It's an expensive process, more expensive than fires and people dying, more expensive than drying up the reservoirs and the fresh water. It's more expensive than that. I don't understand why more is not being done to utilize that water, make it so that it is potable, that it is available for us, since there's concern about freshwater sources. The other thing, and I'm not going to, regarding Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles, I'm too tired. I can't get on the Karen Bass for or against bandwagon fully. What I do want to say is one of the reasons that so much heat is being directed towards Karen Bass is because the chief of the Los Angeles City Fire Department has been in the media talking about Karen Bass and the budget. Los Angeles County has a fire department. The city of Malibu is a city. They have their own separate mayor. Pacific Palisades is an unincorporated area of Los Angeles. They come under Los Angeles County, not Los Angeles City. They have a county supervisor whose name is Lindsay Horvath. The city of Pasadena has its own mayor. These cities have mayors and city managers. So when people say, oh, they're attacking Karen Bass, there's enough truth out there. There's enough principled critique that can be made of Karen Bass without dredging up lies. You ain't got to lie. You ain't got to lie, Craig. You ain't got to lie. You don't have to lie on Karen Bass. Make a principled critique. But let's stop getting carried away with right-wing conspiracies because you don't like somebody. Let's not do that. We have to be more informed. We have to be more politically informed. Okay? Those are a couple of points that I wanted to make. Shout out to Black Lantern Co-op. Shout out to Pasadena Black Pages. Shout out to all the folks doing this work. There was a black newspaper called the Pasadena Journal that served the community for many years. Unfortunately, the publisher of that, Joe Hopkins, passed away in November of 2023. I don't know of anyone that has taken up that work now of being the voice, the organ of the media organ for Black folks in Pasadena or Altadena. I'm sure they're also not thinking about that right now. They're just trying to survive. They're trying to make sense of what has happened to their lifetime of memories, to their lives, to their homes. I don't know how many of them have the insurance council, have insurance, are going to be allowed to rebuild. There have been some reports of a curfew being imposed now, and people being in the area who were trying to assess damage to their homes or retrieve things being arrested. I don't know the status of that. Again, Pasadena, Altadena, historically Black area. So that tells you who they're identifying as looters and who they're locking up unjustly. But again, at the moment, I don't have that information, whether or not they've been released, but curfew is in effect in certain areas. So please go to, hopefully these links will stay up once the show is over, the links will stay up in the chat where you can give assistance to Black families, in particular in Altadena and Pasadena. The link to the Pasadena Black Pages, the link to Black Lantern Co-op. If for whatever reason it does disappear, I'll have to come back later and put them in there. But again, I appreciate you all so much for tuning in. As I said, this is my understanding of why Black Liberation Media exists. So please continue to support the channel, support the work that we do so that we can continue to bring you these guests, this information, this analysis. All right, so now I'm gonna go finish packing my to-go bag in case I might have to evacuate or maybe take a break. I don't know, what have you. But again, appreciate you all so much for hanging with me. Please, why y'all make me beg all the time? Please like, please share, please subscribe. I'm saying it nicely. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe to Black Liberation Media, to my own channel, to Rootwork. You see we got the ticker going at the bottom of the page, how you can support. Please continue to do that as you support folks in Pasadena and Altadena who are in need of your help. But just as importantly, plug into ways that you can help your community get organized wherever you are, so that when something like this happens in your community, you will be activated. You will already have been organized and you will be activated. All right, can y'all do that, please? All right, appreciate y'all. Y'all take care. Peace.